Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. Anyone who watches this show knows that we spend the vast majority of our time calling out the corruption and the cruelty of Donald Trump and his enablers. But every once in a while, I think it's important to step back and try to understand what drives that behavior. Michael Wolff has gained extraordinary access into Trump's inner circle, and some of his stories about what happens there are almost impossible to believe. In the wake of all the damage that the Trump administration is now doing to our institutions, to our way of life, and we're only a few weeks into a second term, I thought it would be helpful to talk to Michael about the time he spent on the campaign trail with Trump and the insights he gained into just how incredibly strange Donald Trump's universe is. It's a fascinating character study. That's the other thing about Michael Wolff that I really appreciate. He doesn't describe himself as a political journalist. His goal is to understand people. And I think he gets Donald Trump, the person, better than anyone. Welcome to the Ken Harbaugh Show. My guest today is Michael Wolff, the author of 13 books. Is that right?
I believe that is. I'm counting. Yes.
I guess you lose count after a while, but your latest is All or Nothing: How Trump Recaptured America. It's an incredible insider account of the 24 Trump campaign. At what point during that race, Michael, did you realize that this might not be your last book about Donald Trump, that he might actually win, and we'd all have to keep dealing with his insanity for at least another 4 years?
You know, it sort of went back and forth. I mean, I was different from most of the people I knew who absolutely believed there was no way that he could be reelected. And because I thought, well, yes, I mean, there's a good possibility here that he could be reelected. And then, you know, certainly before Biden withdrew, I thought, oh my God, this is likely. He is going to be reelected. And then Kamala Harris had a good month, and I was like, okay. But then by the end of that month, so by Labor Day, I thought this is only going in one direction.
Really? You knew that early? Was that sentiment apparent within the Trump campaign?
Yeah, I mean, they were still, you know, nobody was. I mean, I think everybody in the Trump campaign, and you know, I was kind of speaking to them moment by moment as Election Day unfolded, and there was some optimism, but I think everybody in the campaign was shocked that it happened so quickly and so definitively. But I from Labor Day on, I thought this is not going well for the Democrats.
And the DNC didn't give you any cause to reconsider that, as energetic and optimistic as it was. That didn't flip the script for you.
No, I mean, it did a little bit, you know, and certainly in August there was that, I mean, that kind of remarkable Kamala month, in which it didn't, you know, that was strange, because suddenly from nobody saying anything good about Kamala for years, suddenly you had a month in which she was everybody's new discovery, and there was. I mean, it carried a lot of people along. I don't think it was real, and I think that turned out, as of Labor Day, a lot of people started to suspect that this was not real. I mean, I think that there was still a feeling that this would go really down to the wire, but I know that the Trump numbers were that they were surprising people within the Trump camp.
They really did have a sophisticated data operation. Again, they knew more about the electorate and at least their target voters than we ever gave them credit for, certainly more than I gave them credit for. And it paid enormous dividends. I mean, as haphazard and reckless and sloppy as the candidate seems, the campaign was was a machine.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that they had a very, from a technical point of view, they had a theory of the game that proved to be correct, which is, um, let's not spend money on. I mean, let's certainly not spend money on people who are not going to vote for him, and let's not spend money on people who are going to vote for him. Let's find those people who we can convince. And that's really what they did with some amount of discipline. I have to say, I mean, in a campaign that in itself had no discipline, because Trump is, wherever Trump goes and whatever Trump touches ends up in some at some level of chaos. But he's not interested in a data operation. So therefore that ran pretty much independently without interference from him.
Well, let's talk about the candidate, because those parts of your book, the vignettes, the observations about Trump as the human being, Donald Trump, are the most interesting. They're in some ways the most alarming. Can you talk about? I'll just pick. Yeah,
Well,
go ahead.
and I mean, I always try to make the distinction. I'm not really a political writer. I'm a writer who's interested in character. So from that point of view, Donald Trump is kind of heaven sent. I mean, he is an extraordinary character, not like anyone you or I or anyone we know knows. And the kinds of things to survive, the kinds of things that he's survived, to have kept going in the face of 4 criminal indictments, for instance, not to mention 2 impeachments, not to mention countless other investigations, is extraordinary. Now, this almost sounds like I find something incredibly positive about the guy, but I think it's also a kind of a negative that he manages to do this, because you could only manage to do this if you live in a separate reality, which I believe that he does.
Hey, it's Ken. Quick break to let you know we've got a Substack page for the Ken Harbaugh Show. If you want to make sure you never miss an episode, check it out. A lot of you already have. Thank you so much. And if you're able to, please subscribe. Every dollar goes back into the show to help with research, production, and reporting from places like Ukraine. None of this happens without your support. Thank you. Welcome to the resistance. Can you talk about how carefully constructed that separate reality is? You describe a handful of characters in his orbit who exist explicitly to construct that reality, like his personal printer.
He's surrounded by gradations of flunkies and sycophants and people who would lie down in front of him. And in the first circle, the first circle is comprised of people who literally don't exist except in the way they reflect back to Donald Trump what Donald Trump wants to hear. Then as you move out, the people get a little more normal, but never they never really they don't depart from the necessity to always be saying what Donald Trump wants them to say. So nobody is truly independent here.
The best example of that, and it defies caricature. It's so blatant, is Natalie Harp, who literally exists to print memes and tell the president what he wants to hear.
It's so much so, and that was disturbing to many people on the campaign, even those people whose job was to tell Trump what he wants to hear, could not believe that this woman, who was probably the person closest to him, she remains one of the people closest to him, they were just overwhelmed by her abject obeisance at all times. She just groveled in front of him. She existed only to anticipate his needs.
Describe her actual job, because unless someone hears it from a journalist, they're not going to believe
Well,
it.
even if you, but believe me, I found it hard to believe. I mean, she came into the campaign. She's 30 years old. She came into the campaign in 2022 as a go fetch it girl, and that's what she did initially. And then she was given the job of carrying the portable printer on when Trump was on the golf course. Trump doesn't read on his phone, doesn't functionally. I mean, he doesn't really perform in any kind of a digital framework. So if he's going to get something, it has to be printed out. So she was there carrying this 25 or 30 pound printer, and had her own golf cart to do this. She was there at every hole to print out emails and whatever articles she decided that he should see. And over time, she became the keeper of most information that he received. And in the book, I tell a story that she began to insert her own information into this, which are effectively these extraordinarily alarming love letters, I suppose, in which I include several in the book, and everyone in the circle found them alarming, including the Secret Service, who at one point advised that she might be a danger to herself and to the candidate. And he put this out. Everyone tried to figure out, how do we get her out of there? One point, they took away her golf course, and she just put the printer on her back and ran after him. And there would be kind of delegations that would go to Trump very gingerly to kind of say this might be a problem. And then he would say, no. Natalie loves her president. And at the end, she was, and I've seen the plain manifest. She was the person who was with him all of the time, 100% of the time.
How did you get access to those love letters? She clearly didn't have a shredder along with the printer. That was probably an oversight.
Well, yeah, I think that everybody was disturbed about this. These letters were passed around within the Trump circle with everybody being astounded by this.
That is part 1 of my interview with Michael Wolff. Stay tuned for part 2 next week, where we get into the awful ways in which Donald Trump treats the people closest to him. And Michael describes a dinner party at Mar-a-Lago that will leave you astounded. And don't forget, the Ken Harbaugh Show now has a Substack page. Please subscribe. The link is in the notes below.